Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao on Pod and Roku TV's World Politics. On this show, we talk of the news of the day and political events, particularly on the heels of a presidential election, the likes of which we have never seen in the history of this nation. A former president facing 91 charges, felony charges, misdemeanor charges, and the president of the United States, Joe Biden. Before I begin on some insights on the presidential race and want to mention some other things around the world, I did want to say today, I actually spent some time I attended an event that the president and vice president spoke at yesterday, but in Raleigh, North Carolina. But I wanted to talk today about Joe Lieberman. We often hear the word politicians, but we very seldom, particularly during this divisive time in politics in the United States of America, hear the word statesman. Well, our nation and world lost a statesman just yesterday, shockingly, through a tragic fall where former United States Senator Joe Lieberman passed away at the age of 82. Lieberman was a stalwart in the Senate, a man of faith, adored his wife Hadassah, his children and grandchildren. And this faith allowed him to become such a bridge builder in the Senate. Imagine a time when Democrats and Republicans could work together to do things. Joe Lieberman did just that. He worked together to bring our nation to respond to 9/11. He worked hard to make sure that we fought for clean air and water. And in his latter years in the Senate, and then as a former senator, he worked very hard to, address the border issues and would often go against leaders of his own party, saying we needed a border problem. He has supported John McCain, his friend, against Barack Obama in that second presidential election. And he was a man of principle, one who was grounded. And I have never heard anyone in Washington say anything negative about Joe Lieberman. He ran for the vice president of the United States and lost the vice presidency by 500 votes. But his colleagues say never once did he ever show bitterness for that loss and told Al Gore and his administration that they needed to accept the results of the election and the decision of the United States Supreme Court, making George W. Bush the president of the United States. I could go on, but today on World Politics, we want to reflect on the career of Joe Lieberman. Is his sudden demise perhaps a lesson to us all of how we should conduct ourselves during these times and make sure that we can be civil with each other? I wonder what Joe Lieberman would think about Michelle Mora, a conservative candidate running for the state superintendent of public instruction, who has said that she wanted our governor to stand in execution line and has said that she wouldn't mind if Joe Biden or Obama were assassinated. These are not the words of inspiration to our young children, a position that if she does win, she'll be leading for our schools. I hope Joe Lieberman can be an angel and watch over us and make sure that we act civilly, respectfully, and can agree to disagree at times, but agree on one thing. We want to make the United States of America all she can be. Now, let's get started. We have with us today Mark Lee, Shasha Starr, our political analyst, Rick Rosner, and others who may join.
We'll see if others join and everything along those lines. You did mention that Joe Lieberman had passed. There was another noted death as well, and it's one that I think Sasha may know because he studies economy more than I do, but definitely Daniel Kahneman, who was the person that came up with the psychology of economics, and he died at the age of 90. He was a best-selling psychologist and Nobel economist. So he was definitely the pioneer of what some people call behavioral economics. So that was another person that passed away recently as well. So definitely we've lost some of these great pioneers and all along those lines.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm here for 30 minutes. I got a city council meeting, but I just want to begin by saying we talked about it this morning, and let's talk about Joe Lieberman first, because but I did attend an event with the president and vice president. It was a very interesting event, about 100 people, maybe a little bit less. And the president really summed up the success of economic growth, the fact that his ideas are not old, although he may be old. He said 40 times 2 plus 1, which I thought was pretty funny. But it's exciting, and I think that we just have to look at that. They talked about healthcare. They talked about all kinds of things. Medicaid expansion, reproductive rights, and Kamala was right there introducing the president. So it was a good event. Before that, they spoke at Chavis Heights in Raleigh about healthcare, reducing costs. And but anyway, we'll talk about towards before I leave. But let's talk about Lieberman. This was quite of a shocking news to many people. I just heard former North Carolina Governor Patrick McCrory. I forgot in my opening to say that Joe Lieberman was also the founder of No Labels, and believed so passionately that we needed to have consensus building. So what are your thoughts about the passing of Lieberman, and is there anything we can learn from this, Rick?
Well, so Lieberman did a couple things that annoyed liberals. One was that he supported Bush and Cheney's claims that there were weapons of mass destruction, and that there turned out not to be in the Iraq, that leading up to the Iraq War, our cause for going into Iraq, which turned out to not be correct, and never apologized for pushing for the Iraq War. Thing two is he stopped the public option from being part of Obamacare, and also stopped from people being able to join Medicare at age 55 instead of age 65. So yeah, he worked across the aisle, but that also meant doing some things that liberals didn't like.
Well, and excuse my ignorance, was he still a United States Senator, or did he leave the Senate?
I believe he left the Senate.
I don't know, because I've been reading up on it. I don't know when he left the Senate. I believe he definitely cast the vote, or prevented. He was in the Senate when he stopped the public option from being part of Obamacare.
So that would have been sometime back in everything. So I'm actually looking.
That would have been around 2010, 2009. Yeah, 2009. It looks like.
Yeah, so he was not still in the Senate. He had not been in the Senate for some time and everything. So he had been out of the Senate for some time. And like you said, he was one of the people that was a founder of No Labels, along with our own David Walker and a number of others that are part of that and everything. Matter of fact, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumerman in a social media post said, "I am devastated to hear about the passing of our former colleague, Senator Joe Lieberman. My heart is with his beloved wife." So definitely that is something that people are remembering him for a variety of reasons and all along those lines. But definitely he had not been in the Senate for a while, to answer your question. And
he's been out of the Senate for, I don't know, probably 8 years. But he was in the Senate when he knocked the public option out of Obamacare.
Well, I'm glad that I see Steve stepped up for his question. I have a question. This is actually for Adam, and Sasha may have some thoughts around this as well. But part of what you talk about, even though it's not been talked about that much on your show lately, Sasha, is because the title of the show is Ukraine, Russia, and China. But lately it's been more about Ukraine and Russia, and rightfully so, and everything. But China is saying that they're going to be the driving force for the world economic recovery, and they are definitely asking their Asian neighbors to take peace and security into their own hands. So I was just wondering your thoughts, Adam, because I know that you have some interesting thoughts around politics, around this notion of China being the leading force in our world economy versus that of the United States, because apparently China leader Xi is saying this, and apparently he also lifted some sanctions that I heard earlier about Australian wine. So I think you can get some Australian wine in China that you might not have been able to get before, and everything along those lines. But what is your take on them thinking that they are going to be the leaders of the world?
I hope he also took out sanctions against New Zealand wine, because New Zealand is producing some amazing white wine. I can recommend, for example, Oyster Bay. It's really fantastic New Zealand wine.
Yes. New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs are great.
Absolutely. So actually, sometimes there is a shortage of Oyster Bay here in Toronto. So if he would keep sanctions against New Zealand, that would be really great. So there will be more wine available in Toronto area.
Well, you know,
Hey guys, sorry I had to step out. Go ahead.
I would like to mention that historically speaking, China was never a world leader and never will be. It's not in the genes of China or Chinese people. They are good at execution, some tasks, but that's all there is to it. They are not world leader material. So they are not world leader, and there will not be one.
Hey, so
Mark, I need to answer your question.
Yeah,
Professor Lamparello here. Real quickly, I just want to ask Adam, and then we're going to go to some other issues, talk about the presidential race. But Professor, what do you think of Joe Lieberman passing? We were just, I gave him a kind of a, summing up the fact that he was a statesman and a bridge builder, bucking his party many times for what he thought was in the right country. For example, being the border. He said that the Biden was getting it all wrong. Supported McCain, his colleague, John McCain, against Obama the second time around. Any thoughts about Joe Lieberman?
Yeah, Steve, great question. It's very, very sad. Joe Lieberman was a great leader. He exemplified the type of moderation that is so absent from politics today. He was intelligent. He was someone who compromised. His policy positions were always reasoned and reasonable. And I think it's a sad day, and it's sad that he passed away. And
it was so shocking. Today I heard our governor, before we get to some other issues, I heard our governor, Pat McCrory. I don't want to get Kimberly's perspective, but he was on WPTF, and I'll be on there tomorrow. But he knew Joe Lieberman very well because Joe Lieberman was one of the co-founders of the No Labels group. And, I very rarely hear Pat McCrory get emotional, but he made a statement at the end of his time. He just said, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Joe Lieberman. I wish that was the way it was about me. But I realized that, he used the example of Lieberman losing the vice presidency by 500 votes. And Governor McCrory said, when I lost my the last governor's race, I lost my 9,000. And he goes, I got to be honest with you, that was bitter. I wasn't nice. I was very angry, but I didn't handle it with grace like this guy. This guy was made of, and he got emotional at the end because you could hear it must be very shaking to me, but it's so missing. I mean, anyway, I'll end with that. I just feel like, how can we bring back?
Well, Steve, one thing I would say related to that is if you recall back in 2000 when Al Gore lost the election, his concession speech was a textbook example of class and grace in the face of defeat. And both Al Gore and Joe Lieberman were that. And they were great leaders. They served America well. And it's a sad day that he's passed.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Compounding the sadness, there's a cautionary tale here. He died as the result of a fall at only 82. I mean, he was probably in pretty good shape and I'm reading a book on aging that says that as you get up to that age, if you have older relatives, if you're getting there yourself, you should know that falls take out a huge number of people of that age, and that there are exercises you can do to improve your stability.
Yeah.
I realized I'm 63, but I fell off a curb a couple months ago and broke my wrist, and it made me realize that I'm getting into the age where, falling isn't nothing anymore.
As President Biden said yesterday to me when I asked, he joked, he said, I'm 30 times 2 plus 1, because I mentioned to the president. He goes, what are you hearing down here, Mr. Rao? And I said, look, Mr. President, I'm going to be really honest with you. People are talking about your age, just saying you're too old. And he retorted back. He said, I'm 40 times 2 plus 1. So
hey, Steve, along those same lines, like I told you before, I had the pleasure of bumping into at his restaurant, Leo Williams, the mayor of Durham and everything. So I bumped into him about 2 days ago because I was leaving one of my jobs and going to grab a bite to eat at his restaurant or one of his restaurants. And one of the things that he said, and I don't know whether you agree or not, but he was because he's going to be getting together a group of African American leaders to try to back Biden and some of the other candidates, because he feels that Mark Robinson does not represent many of the people that he is supportive of. But he felt that both Mo Green and Josh Stein lack charisma, and that's part of the problem that they have, is that they are kind of boring, to put it in his
well,
words.
I think, and real quickly, let's get, this is world politics, so we want to dive into some other international issues. But let's say this. I think that it's going to be about the independent voters in North Carolina. I think the swing states, where it really comes down to those, people that believe that both presidents are too old. Most Americans wish there was someone else running for president, but this is the choice that we have. And so I think it's going to come down to, do people want 4 more years of Trump? Do they want Biden? I think if Biden was 20 years younger, I think he'd have a much easier time, but I think people are just concerned of his age. And I think the vice president might be his weak link. And probably Adam Lamparello agrees, because I think what I'm hearing out there is that people are looking at it saying, if something were to happen to Biden, we're not so confident in Kamala Harris being the president. So, Joe, I think Trump
is there anything specific that people can say against Kamala Harris? Because it seems to me that people.
No, a lot of it has to do with the way that she handled, and I think Adam can back me on this, some of the issues around criminal justice and around the things that she was doing given she was attorney, she was in the attorney's office at that particular time, the attorney's office there in California. But yeah, a lot of people were not happy with the way that she did some of her sentencing and going after certain communities. And that's what I've heard. I don't know if you've heard something similar.
Well, I think she put a lot of people away for pot back when pot was illegal.
Right.
She was very law and order, as she, which was her job, to enforce the law.
I love how you liberals give a pass to your friends so easily. When you criticize Trump for the very thing that you suddenly exonerate her for. She acted like a MAGA law and order person as Attorney General of California. I know that. I worked with her on an amicus brief. Number 2, she's dishonest. Number 3, she's not very intelligent. Number 4, she looks very foolish in public when she speaks. Now, as far as Biden goes, Biden deserves a lot of credit. Okay, he's done a lot of good things in his life, but he's going to lose the election, because when you compare Biden's America to Trump's America, what you see under Trump is lower inflation, lower gas prices, okay? You see a more secure border. You see a better economy. The working class United States, men and women and independents, are going to go for Trump, because Trump's America, whether you hate him or not, people were doing better under Trump, okay? And that is a fact, and it's going to be Trump in 2024. And I think we should all realize the sun's going to come up the next day anyway when Trump gets elected. Life will go on. We don't need to be so concerned.
I did not give her a pass. I actually specifically pointed out some of the issues that were going on. So for you to say that we're all giving a pass.
But why did you do that, Mark? She was doing the right thing in California. She was tough on crime, and that was a good thing in California. The problem with her is when she got to the vice presidency, she flipped all of her positions, and that destroys her credibility. She was also dishonest. She's a terrible public speaker, and she's not terribly bright. And for those reasons, Rick, those are 4 reasons. I can give you more. But when it comes to Biden, I just filled up my gas tank today. It was $3.20 a gallon. I go to the supermarket, and it's $6 for a loaf of bread. When you look at that and you compare it to Trump, and then you look what's happening at the border, and you look at the fact that Trump, the economy was better, corporate taxes were lower, he doubled the marriage exemption. It was a better.
I love it. This is getting ready for my city council meeting. It's like sparring with Lamparello. Get their minds sharp. I'm going to go in there and eat these guys up tonight. But to play devil's advocate, I mean, the bottom line is this. I mean, COVID. Some of the inflation was really due to the fact that we were going through a pandemic. So there were disruptions in the supply chain. Demand exceeds supply. Prices go up. We had inflation. So I don't think you can blame either Trump or Biden for it. It was just the circumstance of the time. But isn't there an argument that under Joe Biden, you make a good point. Still, inflation, you can still have inflation coming down, but prices are still higher. And so that's going to be a challenge for President Biden, because that's why people still don't believe the economy is getting better. But if you look at the numbers, and I talked about this morning, the economy is doing better under Joe Biden. I mean, 15 million new jobs, 31 billion right here in North Carolina on green manufacturing. A lot of that money that was pumped in, many economists are even saying that we were able to avoid a recession. So I think I'm just playing devil's advocate respectfully. I mean,
no, I appreciate that. I really do. And it's a great discussion. The economy is doing better for the rich. The economy is not doing better for the middle class. The middle class are struggling to make ends meet. They go to the grocery store, they see how high prices are. They go to the gas pump, they see how high prices are. They see a border where people are coming in, over 20,000 people a day. And they also see a leader, Joe Biden, who, when he speaks publicly, does not acquit himself well. And those intangibles are going to matter. And when I think of someone as esteemed and brilliant as Mr. Vladimir Putin, who, again, I want to congratulate on his reelection, when I compare him to Joe Biden, America looks weak. And I want to say to Sasha, Sasha, you have had numerous opportunities to congratulate Mr. Putin on his reelection, and you've declined to do so. I think that's shocking, and I think that you should, issue an apology for that.
You really should start a new career as a stand-up comedian. You'll do extremely well. You'll become very popular.
Well, I can be smart and funny at the same time.
Really?
Well, I mean, I want to comment.
We got one woman here. You always listen to a woman when woman's in the room. I learned that from my wife.
From Kimberly.
That's true. That's true, Steve.
Comment to Adam just a little bit here about Kamala. Anyone has a right to change their mind after they've reevaluated facts. That shouldn't change their credibility. A lot of people, a lot of times, see things one way when they're doing things a certain way. And then they say, oh, they listen to other people, they go to other places, see other things happening. So I think everyone has a right to change how they do things or the way they view things based on experience. And I think maybe that might have been what happened to her. But like you said, she did a very great job cleaning up crime because she had zero tolerance. And that's what we need. Now, Biden might not have done the best, but the economy is swimming better. I will say this, the majority of our economic problems have come from when Trump was in office. When you spill milk, sometimes it takes a long time to clean it up and fix it. And when you have a group of people that don't unite and don't work together, you're not going to fix them as fast. And the gas prices, I'm sorry, people, but that had nothing to do with the president. That had everything to do with the gas companies. You want to complain about it? Go to the CEOs of the gas companies, because you can go read the report. This had nothing to do with gas shortages, had nothing to do with whether something could pump in our gas lines here in the U.S. It had everything to do with lining their pockets with profit. And they did so because they knew that people were dumb enough to believe that it would be the president and they would blame him.
Exactly. So
you can argue with me all you want, but I go sit in those rooms for 10 hours a day, listening to everything that happens on oil, gas, and energy. And it had nothing to do with the president. You want to blame somebody? Go to and start regulating gas. Start regulating.
No, you went to Sierra Week and everything. And that's a great thing. Just really quickly, I'm going to read something. I want Adam and everybody else to tell me when they think that these quotes came out. Over the next 2 years, income for middle-class Americans is projected to grow at less than half the rate as for the richest 1%, a recent Congressional Budget Office found. The country's top earning households will also enjoy a bigger decline in tax rates than all other groups. As a result, income inequality in the U.S., already at a 50-year high, is expected to worsen. Income for middle-class Americans is growing more slowly than for both top earners and the poor, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Adam Lambarello, that was actually from 2019, which would have been under Trump's administration.
Oh, really? Well, let's look at Trump's administration.
Well, I'm just telling you what that quote was from 2019.
Let's look at the fact that under Trump, there were no wars. Under Biden, he had one hell of a withdrawal from Afghanistan. Let's look at the corporate tax rate under Trump. 21% that Biden raised. Let's look at the gas prices under Trump versus Biden. Let's look at the border under Trump versus Biden. Let's look at inflation under Trump versus Biden. On every count, Trump wins. And American voters aren't going to get into the weeds and the nitty-gritty of the details of why. What they're going to do is they're going to look in their wallet and look at what happens at the grocery store and the gas pump and say, I was better off 4 years earlier. And that's why Trump is winning and why he will win. Now, as far as Rick and Kim go, they're going to be biased in favor of their liberal political candidates no matter what. They're going to do everything they can to rationalize because they're not thinking rationally. I just gave you the reasons. Now, you tell me why you think the American voter is going to vote for Biden over Trump, given these facts.
Adam, hold on a second. Did you just say that Kim is a part of the liberal establishment? Last time I checked, Kim was running and a supporter of no labels. That would not be necessarily a liberal political.
No, I'm in support.
No, what I said was she can be beautiful and wrong at the same time.
Thank you, but I'm in support of anybody else, so don't get that wrong. But let me explain something. I do agree that
the problem, and Steve,
about the rich, but Trump started it by giving away PPP loans in the billions, and then they waived them and forgave them for themselves. Did not tax themselves on it. Were not accountable for it. And this is a trickle down, river up economics. I mean, it was horrible. And they blamed students for the debt. The students are not to blame for the debt. That PPP loan that Trump gave out, that's the blame for the debt. And you know what? He gave billions to everyone. You know, Nick got lots of it. You know, Nick even says so on TV, but he only gave each of you $2,000.
Good. Because income inequality is a natural result of human existence. There are people who are going to be more innovative, more creative, and more talented than others. And we want to give breaks to them because we want to encourage that innovation. Okay. And there's some people who are not going to be as talented as others. Income inequality is the same as looking at any football season, baseball season, or basketball season. Some people win, some people lose. What you guys are talking about is equity. And equity is the catalyst for division in this country because it tries to normalize and equalize outcomes when, in fact, what we should be focused on is equalizing opportunity.
And I want to define equity versus equality.
Go ahead, Steve.
I got to leave in 3 minutes, but equality is when you're all, let's say we're all in a baseball game and we're watching it, we're all in the same room, but somebody has a higher view than the other. But equity is when you're watching the same game from the same view. So you're taking into account the circumstance. That's why there's a difference between racial equality and racial equity, right? But I think it can be across the board. There's certain people right now that are in the U.S., but they just don't have the same perspective because they're not making enough money. They're paying a lot for groceries. They're paying a lot for housing. And these are issues that we need to deal with, right? So this is the problem in America. You have two different Americas, and you've got the urban areas like Raleigh where people are paying $25,000 to get a picture with Joe Biden. And then you've got, people that can't even afford to pay the rent or they're going to be evicted. And they may be living in South Raleigh or an hour away. But go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Rick.
Adjusted for inflation, middle-class wages have been flat for the past 50 years. And all the gains in the economy due to increased productivity and technology have gone to the 1%. And you can't tell me that every member of the 1% deserves those increases in income because of talent. A lot of it's is generational income, generational wealth passed down. That Trump gave an $8 trillion tax cut to corporations and the top 1%. And any tax cuts for the middle class under Trump.
Thank you all. I'm going to hand it over to Mark Lee and Kim to take over. Yeah. Thank you all so much for being on World
Great
Politics.
Seeing you, Steve.
It's been a great show. We want to encourage you to come on as guests. And Kimberly, Calhoun, and I are working on a new show that we're going to be starting on another network called American Politics. But we enjoy this show. This is what we like: bringing in guests, having respectful discussions, and
thank you, Steve.
We'll keep making it happen. I will see you see you tomorrow, but see you next week. Thank you.
Next week. Take care, Steve.
Hey, Kim, just really quickly, and this is something I was going to bring up, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure Adam will have some thoughts about it as well. But the federal government, we love the federal government, and I'm being slightly sarcastic, is changing how it is collecting data. And actually, Steve kind of alluded to it on race. So Americans will be able to check a box to identify as Middle Eastern or North African for the first time. So this is definitely something that's going on. So the new standard combines race and ethnicity into one question. Previously, many government surveys, including the 2020 survey census, would ask if someone is of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and then ask the respondents their race, which often resulted in people who answered yes to the first question and then identified as either white or some other race on the race one. So it does look like they are trying to figure out what to do with this whole race and ethnicity situation, even with the government. And this is something that is being done through the Office of Management and Budget. So we know that Nick and even you, Kim, and others are big fans of us and what we're doing with the budget. But I was just wondering our thoughts that we need to be having this kind of question being asked, because there's some people that might be upset that there are Middle Eastern folks in the country and everything. But definitely, as they said, since Middle Eastern or North African people typically do not identify as white, previous federal demographic data such as census data has not accurately reflected the presence of these communities. So I guess they're trying to figure out a way that they can actually figure out who is Middle Eastern in the communities. But Adam, any thoughts on this? Because this is something that just came out recently.
Yeah, well, my broader thought is this, and you've heard it here first, and I know it'll be controversial, but it's correct. Diversity destroys countries. Diversity destroys countries. You want to know why? Because when a country is too diverse, then the common values which typically unite people of that country break down. That's why homogeneous populations, like in Finland, are so successful. Now, that doesn't mean that they're racist. That doesn't mean that they're sexist. Okay, but it does show you, and studies suggest, that diversity can be very destructive. Now, one thing that Rick and Kimberly neglect to mention, and will never mention when it comes to income inequality and racial division, single parent families. That is the reason why the Black community is struggling so much. 73% of Black children grow up without a father. But they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about Trump as if Trump is the most evil person to ever exist. And Sasha wants to talk about Mr. Putin, who thankfully in a very democratic society was recently reelected. But we don't want to talk about the root causes of the problem. And guess what? Single parent families and diversity are those root causes.
And where did
Finland has a population
because I know quite a few people that are in.
Has a population of 5.6 million people. America is 60 times larger than Finland. You can't compare what Finland does to what a behemoth country like the U.S. with that's 3,000.
All right, compare us to Japan. Compare us to Japan. Compare us to China.
We're
look at China's immigration policies. Look at Japan's immigration policies. You can't immigrate
a dictatorship.
So
China's a dictatorship. China had huge problems under Mao. Mao killed 50 million Chinese people.
Singapore was a dictatorship, and guess what? People were happy and had free education, free housing, okay, and free health care.
You can't compare Singapore's dictatorship, which is again, Singapore is 2 million people.
Why are you hostile to
what the U.S. is?
Democracy has caused all these problems in America that you speak of: income inequality, racial division.
Hard to tell when it's hard to tell when you're kidding or not. It's hard.
I'm not kidding. I'm being dead serious.
Dictatorships killed hundreds of millions of people throughout the 20th century. Stalin, dictator, killed 40.
Bad ones. I'm talking about benevolent, good ones, like the one in Singapore.
That's Singapore has 2 million people. Everybody's rich. You can't compare what Singapore does.
Everyone's rich. That proves my point. Everyone's happy there. Here we have high crime, drug abuse across the country, division. Democracy is what you call a disaster.
Singapore is basically a city. It's 10 miles across, 2 million people. You can't compare a city, a rich city, with an entire nation that we are with 1/3 of a billion people.
Well, at least they don't allow idiots to vote.
Well, the thing is that a lot of countries are a lot older than us, and we're still making a lot of mistakes. I think that freedom to be able to vote is very important, but I think that we're putting way too much emphasis on the wrong priorities. And I think Adam had stated that, as well as Rick, that we need to start focusing on more of the things that we need as a general population. And, and Mark, I want to get back to you on, the identifying people and labeling people. I think we need to stop doing that. I don't care if a person is Black or from China or Korea or the Middle East. All I care about is their character, their ethics, whether they get a job done or not, whether they show up or reliable or consistently just good, kind people. And that's what matters. And I think we put way too much emphasis on our different culture assets as opposed to who we are individually. And I think we need to get down to that. And I think we need to get down to voting for people, not parties. And I'm not for even no labels. I'm actually for nobody else right now.
Anybody else is a great candidate, but like I said, there's a chance of running. They still got to get on all those ballots and everything along those lines.
Adam can run
but I'm a big supporter
Kim, you should be ashamed for not supporting Trump, given the state of the country. I'm very surprised at you.
I support somebody who is not.
I thought you wanted to make America great again. I guess I was wrong.
Oh, there's that MAGA label again.
I want to make America great. I'm a woman. I want to live in America safe. Okay. I want to be safe and away from men who would take advantage of women, who promote doing that, who have been found guilty of sexually offending people. Yes, Rick.
You know who's the biggest threat to biological women right now? Transgendered women, not men.
No, not really. I disagree.
Right.
Okay.
People say that fear.
All right.
In replying to Mark, if you're going to ask people their ethnicity on census forms, then you have to give them the chance to accurately say what ethnicity they are. And in terms of ethnicity in America, it's fine for people to be aware of people's ethnicities. And the market loves biracial couples. That usually 40 years ago, it was illegal in much of the country, 50, 60 years ago for Black people to date white people, to marry white people. But
there was an entire movement called Loving.
What? Yeah, market forces. So like that went away. Nobody cares about who dates whom anymore because the economic forces love biracial couples because in an ad, a bank can show a biracial couple and they can appeal to two demographics, the white demographic, the Asian, whatever ethnicities the couple, because of market forces, resistance to biracial couples went away. And that's a good thing. And in a lot of this stuff, the market forces will accomplish more than the government can. But in the meantime, until market forces can, I want a government run by sane, competent people. Trump is not competent. Trump hires a lot of idiots, and the non-idiots like Rex Tillerson, former head of Exxon, Secretary of State, very competent, hardcore capitalist, but he had to leave because after, 10 months, he couldn't stand working next to Trump, who's an idiot.
No, he's not an idiot. He's educated at Wharton School of Business. He single-handedly
do his school.
He's one of the richest people in the world. He employed more women than he did men, more African Americans than any other executive, and he was honored by the NAACP for his efforts in the 1990s. But you don't want to talk about that. Instead, you and Kim want to attack Trump because what you want.
You are avoiding that he has also a degree from Trump University. Why you are omitting that?
I'm not omitting that. So he created a university that was
okay. He created Trump Airline. Oh, you remember Trump Airline?
So Trump did.
Do you remember casinos in Atlantic City? You do? Do you know that the casinos were a public company? Do you remember what's happened with that company? Do you remember what's happened with Trump University Airlines?
Okay, so Trump did some.
Whatever he touched in his life went in flames. He lost everything what there is to lose in his life. His father's inheritance, $400 million, was lost instantly. Money,
And Trump-
shareholders' money in casino was lost. Here in Toronto, we have a skyscrapers which was supposed to be a Trump Tower. There were lawsuits, all money investors, they get all lost and fleeced, and their lawsuits are still going on. This is what Trump is. Destruction. It's even worse than Putin, because Putin, he's the ruler of that country, Russia. Okay, that's all what there is to it. It's too far from us. Actually, you know what they're doing now? They're creating a bank of Americans and Western people.
I mean,
like a
I'll tell you
journalist.
something.
He keeps them to exchange for the Russian spies in Europe and United States. So he's
First of all,
bank. That's what
the
really
fact that
good.
the fact that you would come on this show and be so disrespectful to Mr. Putin is beyond rude. But when it comes to Mr. Trump, what I'll tell you is this.
Happy birthday,
Sasha,
Sasha.
Sasha, all you're saying, Sasha, is that Trump did some bad things. Well,
Really?
so every human being
How
on the face of
dare
the
you
earth.
are to say that Trump did bad
Trump did
things?
some very good things too. Bill Clinton did some good things, and we know he did some bad things. Richard Nixon did some good things. We know he did some bad things. That's the nature of human
They
existence.
all together, they are not worth of even one finger of Trump. Trump is the evil of this world, including United
No, he's
States.
not.
He
No,
is
he's
a complete evil, 100% evil.
He's a very
there
flawed
is
human
no
being, is what he
good
is.
thing that you can
Who has
say
done
about
some good
him, not
things.
even one. He's a pathological liar. He was swindling his. Oh, look at this new public company, DT. What is it?
DJT.
What about Anthony Fauci, Sasha? What about Anthony Fauci?
Do you know what kind of scam is that? The company has revenue of around $1 million, and they lost last year $49 million.
Tell that to all the banks. Tell that to all the banks who still want to loan to Trump. Trump has done some very good things, some very bad things. Most people.
This scam of Trump.
And
How
guess what?
dare
He
you
did a
are.
better job in the White House than Biden. And the fact that you are on this show,
Oh, no.
despite over a dozen opportunities to congratulate Mr. Putin on his reelection, your failure to do so is appalling. And I
You're
would
doing
hope
that for
that
me.
you would
What?
reflect
I
on that
delegated.
decision.
I
Wait,
I am
what?
delegated.
upset about this. This is terrible
Yes.
that we're attacking Russia
Yes,
like this.
Adam, you are fantastic.
You know what? Maybe
Good.
we need Trump, because he knew how to embezzle money better than anyone I know, except he got busted. But he embezzled all of that money from the children's charity funds. He embezzled money from other charities. The courts ended up, when they caught him, made him pay it back. But I mean, who does that? Who embezzles money from
Who is
charity?
being persecuted by the justice system? Trump with these phony indictments.
Doesn't matter. He still got
But
busted
Trump
for
is the worst
embezzling.
person.
You can't make up embezzling money. Nobody made that up.
Adam,
Bottom line is,
the
of the four people on
prosecution
this
of
panel,
Trump
only one
doesn't
wants to
embezzle
make America
money.
great
it's
again, and that's
about
me.
to start. So far, Trump put under the bus all his lawyers, associates, and everybody's either in jail or indicted. Look at the Giuliani, that old fool. He's going bankrupt. Everybody's suing him. He's a complete idiot, and he's Trump. I'm for Trump. He's
Well, I
great.
agree with you, Giuliani.
Hey, Giuliani. Hello. What's happened to you? Your friend Trump put you under the bus, but he
And
put under the
Giuliani.
bus everybody, even his sons, his stupid two idiots. He put them under bus just as well. They're now liable for $4 million each.
In
Okay, but they don't have money
2024,
to pay.
Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are going to make not only America but this world great again because they care about the people. I'm
No,
appalled
no.
at this show,
One-
the way
oh,
rude you
Adam,
are.
Adam,
people
good question.
who wanna
You,
leave
you
this
know what?
country.
Trump's,
should be ashamed.
Trump's residence is in Mar-a-Lago. You know what's the closest jail to Mar-a-Lago where Trump is going to be? West Palm Beach. It's such a like 20
I
minutes
already
drive
said he
from
needs to
Mar-a-Lago.
invest in building prisons. Yes, Rick.
All right, my turn. From
I thought you guys were
1985.
against incarceration and mass incarceration. Oh, I guess when it applies to someone you don't like, you're all fraud. Forget about it. Make
All right,
America
it's
great again.
Rick's
Go Trump.
turn.
2024.
Adam.
From
Rick's turn.
1985 through 2015, according to publicly available records, Trump lost more money than any other American. He went bankrupt 6 times. He is America's worst businessman. Under Trump, 1 million more Americans died than in 4 years under any other president. In 2020, under Trump, there were more Americans without jobs than at any other time before or since. He was a freaking disaster.
He was a disaster because he did not know how to react to certain situations, which is very important for a president to know how to react. He fired pandemic teams and then he said, I'll hire him back if we need him. He never did. Instead, he put all his friends in charge. He, gave out money to all his friends who, waived it and forgave it. I mean, all of the problems we're living with today are due to Trump and the way he reacted to situations.
What pandemic are you talking about? You mean the pandemic where if you got hit by a car, they said it was a COVID-related death, where they said the vaccine works when they didn't, when the majority of people who died already had 2 feet and an elbow in the grave? You mean that pandemic? That fake pandemic? That fake Fauci?
You know what? I tell you what, when you can pull all the medical records and show me that they lied, I'll go along with that. But until then, I have a lot of doctors who tell me exactly what happened and I listen to them. And
your doctors are full of it.
No, my doctors are not full of it.
And so are mine. Yeah, I watched someone die of COVID. I watched the treatment kill my father, not COVID. I watched people in nursing homes who were already dying be called COVID-related death. I saw people who committed suicide called COVID-related deaths, or people in motorcycle. It was a scam. Fauci is a fraud, but all you guys want to do is blame Trump. So I'll stay silent while you keep digging your own graves.
Call it a scam. You're right. Trump brought it. Yes. Rick.
So 80% of the people, of the Americans killed by COVID were seniors, were 65 or over. However, if you look at the actuarial statistics, every death from COVID erased a 10 years of life, a decade of life from the people it killed. Yeah, people were generally old, may have had some health issues, may have been obese. That doesn't mean they deserve to die. And COVID took 10 years of life away from grandmas and grandpas. And, old people shouldn't be disposable that way.
I'm not saying they should be. I'm saying that they were in grave condition.
They weren't. They were just, a lot of people were overweight or old, and it also killed some reasonably.
So Rick, what do you have to say about remdesivir? Because my father went into the hospital with COVID, and my father was perfectly fine. Then they gave him remdesivir, and he died. And there's a lawsuit in California.
I didn't
about you don't want to hear that, do you?
I'm not qualified to talk about. I don't have the knowledge base to talk about remdesivir.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Remdesivir was not the drug to fix this problem. Who supported it?
I agree with you, Kim.
I do know that personally, I've been, between my wife and myself, we've been vaccinated against COVID, I think 15 times.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's fine. I'm fine. I'm able to sit here and yell at everybody here every day. So I don't think the.
Do you remember that Trump himself had COVID and he got well in 2 days? I think Regeneron or some kind of a drug.
That's right, Sasha.
Was administering, and he was fine. He was like nothing happened to him.
Yeah, they gave him they gave him refined antibiotic. They took the cells from other people and injected him with the Regeneron. Isn't that the deal where they pull immune plasma from other people and
Plasma
refine it down, and then
transfusion.
they stick it into you. He got the best possible treatment. He got other people's immunity.
But you know what? We had a doctor that worked at Harvard who ended up with 7 patients, and he came on our show a lot during that time. His patients were dying. They gave it to him. He was doing lung research, and he cured every one of them by just giving them high doses of quercetin, which is very safe for you. It had nothing to do with the hydro, whatever, chlorine or remdesivir. It was just natural things. And he even said if we just took this naturally every day, it would prevent it. And even James Eade says that he keeps a bottle. I keep a bottle on hand. It makes a big difference if you start to get sick. Just take a little bit of it. So,
I mean, the deal is that there are a bunch of things that are a little bit effective against COVID. I think they call it the Swiss cheese method, where one piece of Swiss cheese doesn't hold any water. But if you make a stack of Swiss cheese, then the whole that you have all these things that are like slightly effective. The vaccine is pretty effective, like reduces, the danger of death and hospitalization by 50%. You combine that with other stuff, Paxlovid, if you catch a case, and all that, you stack the Swiss cheese until the holes go away, and you've lowered your risk.
Well, let's look at the real pandemic. The real pandemic was destroying our children by keeping them out of school for so long. The real pandemic was depriving people of cancer treatment, of treatment for heart conditions that passed away as a result because of this sole focus on this scam virus that practically killed no one. And a leader, Anthony Fauci, who said we shouldn't wear masks, but then we should. This guy flip-flopped, more than anybody I've ever seen. All right. What we should have done with the virus is simple.
It's not
we should have gone about our lives as normal.
Change your mind based on new information. It's a brand new disease. And
Rick,
as more information came in. What?
Fauci said he lied about masks because he wanted to keep them reserved for hospitals that need them. He lied and lost his credibility. The man is a fraud. The virus is a scam. And funny, under Mr. Putin's leadership, I didn't see many people dying of COVID. Mr. Putin, thank you yet again for another example.
They are dying in jails.
Moscow is where
they are all dying in jails. Okay.
So a lot of countries didn't have
because they got out of line and disrespected their leader. Of course, they're in prison. Maybe if they kept their mouth shut, they'd be right.
A lot of countries lie about their COVID numbers, including the dictatorship of Russia. 1.2 to 1.5 million Americans have died of COVID, which is more than Americans who have died in all of our wars combined. It's the deadliest.
I don't agree with you that they died of COVID.
History.
They died with COVID.
Well,
that's just like semantic BS.
If I had a sickness that my immune system was weak and I was probably going to eventually die anyway, and then I got COVID and it killed me, then COVID killed me. I almost died too, Adam. They overprescribed me medications. And I ended up unconscious for 14 days, not expected to live because my organs were bleeding out. Okay, I get it. But just because, and what are they going to say? Did I die from the disease or did I die from the drugs that they gave me because there were too many of them? So you just got to take a look at what pushed one or the other. But I don't think every doctor out there lied on the death certificates. I really don't believe that. I believe
can I ask you guys a question?
Than that. And I think that COVID killed more people than was even labeled. I've received, calls from people in different places saying people are dying in the streets. Now, are they dying from COVID or are they dying from the impact of COVID because they were homeless? I don't know. But COVID created an effect that just continued to ripple through our community.
Well, you might be right, and maybe Rick is right, and I'm wrong. But I will tell you, the state of Illinois defined a COVID-related death as any death in which the person in the past 60 days had tested positive for COVID, regardless of the cause of death. That's why car accident victims in Illinois were classified as COVID-related deaths. That's why Illinois and California had to reduce their statistics of COVID deaths by up to 30%, because the definitions were whatever you die from, if you tested positive for COVID within the last 60 days, you're listed as a COVID-related death. So my question is this. No responsible doctor would do that.
Was that the government?
They wanted there to be more deaths because they wanted to use it to get Trump out of office, and they did precisely that. And that's why you saw the reductions after Trump lost.
Here's how you tell that COVID caused people to die. You use excess mortality statistics. You look at the average number of deaths per year, and you adjust it for population for the years leading up to COVID. And then you look at the number of people who died during COVID, and you see that 1.2 million more people died, adjusted for population, than would have died in average years before COVID. The national life expectancy went down by almost 2 years. So the COVID is, what else is killing people? I mean, you can say, yeah, okay, opioids kill 100,000 Americans a year.
That's what I'm saying. But you can't say that the cause was exclusively COVID.
Yeah, but you can say that under COVID, 1.2 million more Americans died than what you would have expected to die in years that didn't have COVID. And that's, I think, a very effective proof that people are dying regardless of what's on their death certificates. 1 million more people died, like I said, under Trump than under any previous president. Only 1/3 of that is due to increased population. And most COVID deaths, rolled into Biden. Probably more people will die under Biden than died even under Trump. And I would say that's largely due to COVID, some due to opioids, some due to metabolic syndrome, obesity-related things, some due to despair. I think 6,000 veterans kill themselves every year, 18 veterans a day. So the landscape, the national landscape, is pretty grim in some ways. And I would say that Trump helped establish that landscape.
Just really quickly,
it was a ripple effect
and everything
from his administration that has continued, but it's the divide. Okay, and we can blame the presidents all we want, but it's our divide, and we need to unite again. So
yeah, we're not going to unite when all you guys do is blame Trump. All right, people see through it. It's not working.
He was the worst president in history. Presidential
historians, Rick.
Presidential historians whose job it is to look at the history of the presidency.
Rick, I work with historians. I've worked with historians at university for years. They are all uniformly hard left. Their ratings are not reliable in the least.
Yeah, okay, so most historians lean left, but in these surveys, you also had moderates and conservatives. And in 2018 and 2024, they named Trump, they ranked Trump worst. Now, if you look at the
based on subjective criteria.
So, but hold on. So in 2018, they split the rankings up between conservatives and liberals. And yeah, liberals said Trump was the worst. Conservatives said, yeah, he was only the 5th worst. So even conservatives think he's a pretty sucky president.
I don't care what conservative or liberal historians say, because I don't have any trust and faith in historians whatsoever. And Michael Beschloss is my first and best example of that. These historians should sit in their ivory towers, close the door, and never be heard from again. They are not reliable sources.
Well, and this has been a great
look at the interview with Bill Clinton and Peter Jennings, Rick. When Peter Jennings hit Bill Clinton with those rankings, and look what Bill Clinton said about those historians.
Well, we have to wrap up.
I respect your opinion.
Thank you for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you guys real soon. Take care and happy holidays. Have a blessed Easter, everyone. I love you all. Take care.
Bye bye.